I'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast for buying or really selling a business, either one. Luke, what would you like to accomplish in today's podcast?
How do you negotiate buying a business, determine the value, determine like I'm way overpaying, I'm not paying enough for.
I thought we had talked about this in the past, but maybe not, or maybe you weren't listening. And if you weren't listening and we did talk about it, well, maybe you're not ready to buy a business yet. I'm not sure. So there's a factor, and so EBITDA is before earnings before taxes, insurance, and blah blah blah. So there's factors, and so it could be one factor, two factors, three factors. So so it might be what I was told in college was it's as a kind of a ballpark something is it's two times net or seven times net income or two times gross, whichever is lower often. So if you had a million, if you had a business that was earning a million or sales, top line is your sales, and that's a million, and the bottom line is 100,000. Your business would be worth, at seven times 700,000, or it could be worth two times gross, which is 2 million. So you'd obviously prefer the 2 million, but it's the lower of the two, so it'd be 700,000. Now, again, your business is worth whatever you're able to get somebody to pay for it. So a lot of times, it could be worth far more or far less than what you think, depending on what they're going to do with it once they get it. And um, so when you're looking at it, essentially the seller is going to be looking at all the positive things about it. And the buyers look going to be, and they're going to talk about the seller's going to talk about all the positive, like this is going good, this is going good, this is going good, this is going good. The buyer is going to talk about all the things that aren't going, aren't working. This isn't good, this isn't good, and this isn't good. So it's like a dance that you do in going through it. Does that answer your question or not so much?
Kind of ish. How do you like you mentioned before that a lot of the Amish overpay for businesses. How do you reality check yourself or check yourself from doing that?
So, um, what Jason did, because he had some that, he had investors that were Amish and they held him in check because it was their money. So he's like, so he wanted to go in on a couple of them, but the Amish investors said, yeah, no, that's way too much money. And so you get kind of excited and you go through that. So if you have investors that are putting up the money, they will because it's their money. So they typically they'll put the brakes on. Um, and so um, I think they'll often overpay in the way that they make the way they don't go out of business often. They just work 70, 80, 90 hour, 100-hour weeks. Like they just work like crazy to get themselves out of a hole. One of the things in the Amish community that I've noticed is there's Amish and then there's English. So that's everybody who's not Amish and in the English community. So in the Amish, they tend to be very concerned, nervous about are they charging too much? So if you're buying an Amish owned business, there's a good chance they're not charging what they could be, need to be, should be. That's good and bad for you as a buyer. It's good for you as a buyer because they're not going to have the financials, so you're technically going to pay a far less for that business because they don't have the profit. It's bad for you because when you try to bump up the price on it when you buy the business, you might go ahead and not be able to do it. So we've got a number of clients that are Amish, and one of the challenges that they have is they often compare themselves to other people in their industry. If they're competing against other Amish or other people, like if you're competing in a business where I don't want to say nobody knows what they're doing, like they could be great, carpenters, builders. They could be great if it's a building company, construction company. They can be great at that. Just because you're great at that doesn't mean you're great at business. Whatever you're doing, E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited, the E-Myth entrepreneurial myth, is that they talk about, a baker that says he loves baking, so he wants to go ahead and buy a business, or he wants to start a business or buy a business in baking because he loves baking. Our oldest son, he said, Dad, one of the things that's interesting is I love doing whatever it was he loved doing until he had to do it for a living. Then he didn't like it anymore. And there's multiple reasons for that. And so if you've got a whole marketplace where everybody's underpriced, everybody's undercharging, you might not, likely won't be able to increase the price. So you're stuck in an industry because the competition, if all of them are charging too little, you're going to have a hard time making a good profit, having a solid business in that type of marketplace. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the first things you want to do if somebody's selling a business is you want to ask them why. Like, what's your motivation for selling the business? That motivation is maybe the most important thing of everything. Because a lot of times it's not money. It could be money, but a lot of times it's not. And if it's not money, it's something else. Well, then you've got an edge over somebody else. If you ask that question, somebody else doesn't. So you might be able to help them to accomplish their goals. And in doing that, accomplish your goals too, creating a win-win situation. But so you'd also often go ahead and ask them, if like, why are you selling your business? And they'll tell you. And then you go, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then they'll tell you more. And you might have to ask, so, well, we're getting out of the business. Why are you doing that? And so often it's asking 2, 3, 4 times why is what's going to be really important. Any other questions that you have, Luke?
Nope.
All right. So hopefully this is helpful to everybody. Always remember we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. If you have any questions on anything we covered today, if you're looking at buying or selling a business, connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300 outside the U.S. 630-393-9909. And always remember we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.